workshop which is dedicated for numerical methods uh, at the cutting edges of science and technology. So I've chosen to talk on this topic, wherein which gives a very good scope for me to talk about not only the methods but also the models which are currently very challenging and is also interesting for us to address. So knowing methods and knowing problems are have been two different things. There are a lot of problems and a lot of methods. Unless you match them and you attack them correctly, you will not be able to handle it out. So here in this talk, firstly, I would like to see how mathematics is very nicely placed, wherein you can look at the problems and also you can look at the solution methods like different techniques to handle them and then match them, right? So we will look at few models which is very interesting and which are challenging and which are relevant for the day-to-day life. We'll start both the pure and applied maths. We will look at problems from both the perspectives, and we'll look at the solution methodologies. So we will also try to look at some numerical methods which are currently in use and for handling this problem. So I believe that the participants, especially for the young research scholars and the dynamic research and faculty members who would like to do a lot of collaborative work and who has the zeal to carry forward whatever they have learned to the application world, this will be very useful. I would like them to very keenly listen to these talks so that they will be able to benefit and see how their learnings is so rich and it can help. The goal is just that. So therefore, we will start off with what we actually learn in the classes and listen in the classes and how they are applicable. That's why I'm saying the glimpses of mathematics right to the frontiers of science and technology. When I say the frontiers, I'm really going to address some frontier problems and how the learnings in the classroom is helpful for us to attack these problems and also to devise methods. Okay, so that's so before I launch onto this topic, let me emphasize on one fact that it is very important to realize the fact that there is for attacking any real life problem. So there is a one should respect theory, one should respect the computation and application. All these three things should be respected. This goes as a single capsule. This capsule may be given different names. It could be called as an interdisciplinary topic, or it could be called as an applied mathematics, or applicable pure mathematics, or engineering mathematics, or whatever it is. But it's a capsule which can bring theorists, specialists in application, and specialists in computation together, and they should shake hands. If India could do this, we will also be shoulder to shoulder with the rest of the world. So this is what I would like to drive home. Therefore, our strengths should become all our expertise should become our strength to shake hands with our colleagues in the institute, within our own department, within our own institute, so that we will be able to contribute. That's what essentially I'm trying to drive home through this topic. So it's let's start off. The outline of my talk is going to be what is firstly we will try to address the question, what is this mathematics has got to do with the frontiers of science and technology? It's supposed to be an abstract and a boring topic for lots of people, but not for mathematicians because they enjoy it. And lots of students run away from mathematics saying that, oh, this is very complicated. What is that I'm going to get from this? And very abstract. And what is that I'm going to really do this? Is there something exciting about it? No, yes, it is very exciting, as exciting like anything. It's only in the perception. We will try to get a feel for this. What has what has mathematics got to do with the frontiers of science and technology? We're talking about the cutting edges of science and technology, which people like to really work on, and mathematicians are very much the part of it. We will try to look at that aspect, and we will look at the beautiful world of simulation and visualization that has been enabled by mathematics, how mathematics plays a crucial role in the world of simulation and visualization. And we will also try to look at, as a layman, look at the success of mathematics, and as a technical person we would have looked at, we'll also try to appreciate this. And we will end up finally with a nice 5-minute movie from the how the mathematics is revolutionizing industry. This is a movie which I have picked up from SIAM website. I think it's one of the societies for applied and industrial mathematics, which always addresses the cutting edge problems. And I think with this, let me launch on to the basic idea of what is mathematics. So where is mathematics? Mathematics is fundamentally entrenched in the world, by which I mean that it's everywhere. So how is that? It is an integral part of all disciplines. Mention a discipline, you will definitely find mathematics in it. Whatever discipline you mentioned, whether the fine arts or it's going to be science and engineering or medical sciences or any branch, you will definitely find mathematics as an integral part of it. So advanced mathematics is today becoming more and more relevant to our society. So we will see that through the problems and through the solution methodologies. So where is mathematics? It is really center of the hub of all branches of science and engineering. Mathematics is definitely in medicine. These days, doctors are collaborating and shaking hands with mathematicians. Lots of, I will show you an example subsequently, which is a real example, not nowhere where I'm going to talk about hypothetical examples, everything realistic, which you can really see it for yourself. And of course, chemistry, you know that mathematics is very much integral part of chemistry. Lots of things which are offshoots of mathematical methods handling a lot of problems in chemistry. May be calling it theoretical chemistry, but that becomes a base for a lot of experimental chemistry too. And mathematics, of course, without any argument, mathematics is very much a part of physics, economics, biology, material science, manufacturing, and other branches of engineering, finance, communication, and geoscience, and so on and so forth. I left this empty because mention a branch, it will be definitely be filled in there. I have mentioned few, there are many more which can fill into this. So mathematics is really, math is a hub of sciences, definitely is a hub of science. So mathematics is very much in news. Like any other subject, mathematics is very much in news. So unique team of mathematicians, physicians, and public health specialists are established to help tackle the infectious disease SARS. This is a whole news item. When SARS was a problem, now COVID-19 is a problem. And now SARS was a problem some time back. And the mathematicians were very much the part of the international teams which was fighting this disease. So spiral waves break hearts. The new research stresses the importance of communication between cardiac cells. This is something that looks like biology and medical sciences, but spiral wave generations can be virtually created on the computers using mathematics. Mathematics becomes a way you cannot cut open the patient's heart to search for the spiral waves, which is actually responsible for the cardiac arrhythmia. But then you'll be able to, and then you know the pacemakers. All of us know about the pacemakers, right? The design of pacemakers. How do the pacemakers correct the wrong rhythmic heartbeat? So that can be actually tested a priori virtually on a computer based on mathematical models. We can build up the models. We can really do this is and then the doctors can rightly make a assessment of what happens to a pacemaker. Then they put it. This is one of the things which people do a lot of simulations, and doctors do not readily accept it, but doctors do take a look at these aspects and they try to see if the decisions are in the right direction or not. Finally, of course, it's the doctors who make the decisions, but then these spiral waves, when I say especially related to the cardiac arrhythmia, mathematics is a very important role. I will give an example subsequently. So some pictures I'll subsequently show you. Mathematicians team up with Lockheed Martin to develop computer tracking systems. This is computer tracking systems is very much important. For example, various things for the hacking or to track the hackers or to look at the traffic in the web. So all these things, mathematicians are very much the integral graph theory and network theory. A lot of things are used, but inherently present in that are mathematical techniques and mathematical algorithms are very much there. And if you were to probe into these algorithms or do a research, you will find a lot of mathematicians would have contributed for this. I will show you some examples how pure mathematicians and pure mathematics has become very much integral part of a lot of applications. I will show you some of that. So mathematics solve problems for business. So financial mathematics is one of the very hot topics these days, and we all know that it solves, and we will look at some of that. So news items from Times of India, let's go back from old. We'll also come back to the recent 2020, 2019, when COVID-19 became, how mathematics became a center of, one of the centers of important research topics. So can mathematics predict insurgent attacks? This was a question which was posed to mathematicians, and the outcome of the mathematicians was published in Times of India 2021, 12, 2009. And what did they do? There is a lot of statistical analysis was carried out, and they found a lot of statistical similarities between various wars. And then they were able to use statistics to see that mathematics can, in fact, help in getting some idea about insurgent attacks. This was also done, and this was also used during the election time. Especially in US, it was when in the recent elections, previous elections, when Trump came into the power, a lot of these things were mathematicians were called in to see whether such a can the prediction or the election prediction can be done through mathematics? Yes, of course. There are a lot of statistical methods. There are also deterministic, probabilistic methods which have been employed, and they got a reasonable success with that. Now, mathematics also has been intertwined with scientific progress. So I will not go through everything. I just wanted to say that what Harold Vermer's letter, in which there is a small note written by a Nobel Prize winner. Nobel Prize winner for medicine says that to wage a war on disease, the allies means that team of scientists along with physicists, engineers, computers, and behavioral scientists, mathematicians must be very much included. I will not read the whole thing. This has been recommended by the Nobel Prize winner, says that unless mathematicians are going to be the part of this team to handle the very thing like a disease, like a pandemic right now, what we are seeing, where mathematicians are a part, which we will see subsequently. So mathematics is highly recognized. So here we have a famous pure mathematician, Sir Michael Atiyah from UK. What he has got to say about mathematics, he says that mathematics is an art, a science, having aesthetic and practical qualities. Modern civilization rests firmly on a mathematical foundation. On the other hand, the driving force that created this great edifice is human curiosity. So he says that mathematics is an art and a science, and modern civilization rests firmly on mathematical foundation. That's what a pure mathematician says. And that's a very important thing. I will not, again, read the whole thing. I only want to emphasize that everybody has recognized mathematics as very important and fundamental to everything. So mathematics is everywhere. When I say ubiquitous, it's everywhere. It allows description, analysis, prediction, exposes structures and patterns in the nature, which means if you learn from one structure, whatever lessons we learn from a structure, we'll be carrying forward it to another situation. For example, just to give an example, you'll be really surprised that the people were looking, when the people mathematically modeled how the oil is from the oil wells are being extracted, how the oil slowly gets into the oil well pipes and get extracted. The same, this analogy of the movement of the oil towards the pipe in the oil wells, that has been actually, the lessons they learned from that was used when the subways, where the water was entering into the subways during some flooding situation, they were able to use the same analogy and able to handle it. So that's the pattern of the nature. They're able to see mathematical patterns in altogether, which you cannot think. They are linked. There is oil extraction, the subway getting submerged with flooding water. People could see structural similarities, and the lessons, mathematical lessons from one aspect was carried to another aspect, and they were able to benefit from that. So there are a lot of, so mathematics has become unreasonably effectiveness. So Norbert Wiener says that mathematics is unreasonably very effective. So that's why it's so powerful and so successful. Let's get a simple feel of what is this unreasonably effectiveness means. So let's look, what is this unreasonably effectiveness of mathematics? So great about mathematics that it is so unreasonably effective. Let's say it's unreasonably effective because whatever it says, that's going to be truth, and that's going to be perfect. So for example, simply there is no large prime number. There is no largest prime number. Let's say that's a simple statement, right? So you could mathematically prove it in a very simple way like this. Assume that there is a largest prime number. Let's say largest prime number. List it out. Let's say Pn is the largest prime number. And you multiply all of them and add one, and you get another number, and that's going to be another prime number. If you multiply all of it and add a one, that becomes another prime number. So that means it's a contradiction. If you say that there is a largest prime number, immediately constructing based on the largest prime number, you list it out all the prime numbers before that and end up with this, and you are immediately able to generate another prime number, right? So this unreasonably effective. So they immediately it's proved. Therefore, there is no largest prime number. Why did I quote this? I quoted this because this is one of the results that is used very much in cryptography and things like that. So we will get into the cryptographic applications and how number theory becomes very important, and what kind of algorithms it has generated. For example, let's start with the Fermat's. Fermat's algorithm is Fermat's last algorithm. Fermat was trying to prove the simple result for x to the n plus y to the n equal to z to the n has no integer solutions. No integer solutions for n greater than 2. He wanted to prove that, and for n equal to 2, we know the Pythagoras theorem is highly proved. For n greater than 2, there is no integer solutions. That's what he wanted to prove, right? Fermat has proved this. Parma says in his autobiography, he says that I have discovered a truly remarkable proof which this margin is too small to contain. He has proved it and he wanted to write it, and at that point of time, unfortunately, he didn't have enough paper. He wrote something on the margin, but it was too small for him to write the whole proof. Unfortunately, that proof it was never seen by the people the way he wrote it. So it remained a challenge. How did actually Fermat prove? How did he actually prove it? And later on, it was proved several centuries later. This problem was posed in 1630 and is a very important result in the number theory. And then it was proved by this great gentleman of our current era. I think you all would have seen a movie of this great gentleman, and it was proved in 1994. And its proof is so important because it has got a lot of applications in cryptography and information theory. Therefore, it is a very important result. And apart from being a result in number theory, it has tremendous applications. So it was posed in 1630 and proved in 1994. So before we launch on to getting little more technical, it may be interesting to see how actually this great gentleman, who I think you all by now I will reveal his name after a couple of minutes. By then, I think you would have guessed correct, I guess. So what is that this great gentleman says? How did he actually prove it? He says that when he has known only two things. When my wife has known me while I was working on pharma. That means he has been working only on the pharma, and through working on the proving the pharma theorem, he got to know about other people. I told her a few days after I got married, I decided that I really had time only for my problem and my family. That means he had nothing else. He was doing penance. For him, the world is his pharma, his theory, his mathematics, and rest of and his family. And when you are talking to your young children, you are not interested. They are not interested in pharma. He was talking pharma to his children, pharma's theorems. So maybe it's madness, or maybe it is whatever we call it. So the first 7 years, he was so dedicated. He was only working on that. First 7 years when he worked on this problem, every minute he loved. So very strange. He loves every minute without discovering anything, and he has kept working only on that. There had been setbacks, obviously, things which had seemed insurmountable, but it is a private and a personal battle, which means that in spite of all the things, his interest did not waver. It was just one pointed focus. At the end of it, suddenly one day he fills his blackboard, which you are seeing behind it. He has kept on writing a lot of things. At the end of it, he finds that he has discovered something. So he moves away from his classroom, and then he keeps wandering in the gardens and comes back, and he finds that the proof is still on the board, and he could not believe. And he has proved pharma in 1994. And he is none other than Andrew Wiles, right? He's Andrew Wiles, and we all have seen the movie on Andrew Wiles, and it's one of the famous movies. And this result is so important that he has a lot of applications subsequently, especially in the cryptography and the information theory, where came up after this result, because once it is proved, you could use that for various reasons. Now, I want to talk about one of the results after which the AKS primality test, which is one of the important algorithms currently used for in encrypting and decrypting the information. It's an algorithm which has come from the number theory, which is proved by one of my colleagues in IIT Kanpur. And what you see, this is called as a famous AKS primality test. So what it actually is, he is trying to prove a result in number theory, which that determining whether a given number is a prime or number or not in polynomial time. That's a deterministic algorithm, primality proving algorithm. It's called as AKS algorithm. So this has received Golden Prize and Fulkerson Prize. Why? Because this becomes a very important result. Now you will be able to encrypt and decrypt confidently in a polynomial time. And that becomes a very important result for a lot of applications in cryptography and also in information theory. And this algorithm becomes a very, very important algorithm with a definite proof of the current era. And then that's why the simple number theoretic result became a very powerful tool in application. So what are the tools they have used in proving this result? The tools they have used, you will be surprised, they have used a group theory, they have used linear algebra, they have used trigonometric theory, a basic theory which we have learned in the schools and the colleges. They've effectively used, of course, they have also used number theory. So all this, they have used a number of different tools put together. They were able to see through all these things nicely and able to prove this. So this was proved by this. They belong to computer science, but they respected mathematics. They have picked up all the basics of mathematics and put them together. What I wanted to say here is this combination of using algebra, group theory, then number theory, and some algorithms from computer science, all of them, they were able to use it and prove this, and it became a very important tool. So this is an application. So what are the tools used here? What are the methods used? What you learn about algebra, what you learn about group theory, what you have learned about trigonometry. These were the tools which were used. We will not have time to go through. If anybody is interested in going to the proofs and the methodologies they have used, just Google AKS primality test proof, and you will get to see the paper and basic ingredients in that is a basic mathematics, and that's the way of, that's a method of proof. That's scientific, or there's a tool for technique for proving. So a result in so-called number theory, which was an open problem for several years, for more than 100 years, it was an open problem. These people tackled it. So what we learn in the base, the very basics could be from the schools and colleges, very, very useful. Now let's get into what the more attractive examples or very popular examples which we hear. Okay, we hear a lot about computational, how the computational math is part and parcel of these popular or very well-known examples like functional genomics from bioinformatics theory, financial mathematics, cryptography, simulation of physical systems like aeroplanes, tokamaks, hurricanes, simulation of discrete systems, traffic flow, network, battlefields, immersive visualization, biomedical engineering. I picked a few applications from diverse fields just to show you that definitely mathematics and mathematical tools are part of it in modeling these problems and also in solving the methods. That's what's the focus of this whole workshop. So how to solve them is also from mathematics, and model them is also come from mathematics. Maybe they are perceived by people in different contexts who have learned mathematics, and so if mathematicians themselves were to look into these problems, that will be called as shaking hands with allied fields. So you'll be able to take a lot of information from which you know back into the application world. So first, let's look at what has happened in the functional genomics. That's a bioinformatics problem. So one of the very serious problems, which the protein folding problem. If the protein folding is a set of proteins, is a set of amino acids in a particular sequence, and they're supposed to fold as in the evolution process in a baby or subsequently in as the baby is evolving in a particular folding should be in a particular shape. If there is any deviation from this folding, it can lead to neurodegenerative diseases, which will be manifested subsequently as a baby is born. It can be, it will be unfolding itself in a devastating way. So once this problem can be studied a priori, looking at the sequence of the amino acids. Use a hidden Markov model for sequence analysis. This tool, Markov analysis, Markov modeling, and time series used for a priori prediction of how this particular protein in this particular sequence is going to fold. Is there going to be any deviation from the regular folding, which probably will manifest subsequently as a neurodegenerative disease, or is it going to be in a fine way? So now this is, we all know that the hidden Markov models is very much from mathematical and statistical sciences, and this is very much used here. Just to highlight a few things about the protein folding problem. Protein folding is a process by which a protein structure assumes its functional shape or conformation. It is a physical process by which polypeptide folds into characteristic and functional three-dimensional structure, as I've already said. So if the polypeptide lacks any stable three-dimensional structure, the amino acids interact with each other to produce well-defined three-dimensional structures, folded protein known as a native state. Any deviation from the native state can cause neurodegenerative disease. Failure to fold into native structure generally produces inactive proteins, and in some instances, misfolded proteins have modified toxic functionalities, leading to neurodegenerative diseases. So if you could predict that this sequencing of amino acids can lead to neurodegenerative disease, you can do the genetic therapy. So that's what is one of the genetic therapy things, and for that, the tool becomes to analyze whether it's going to happen nicely or not. Markov models are used. So that's mathematics is very much an integral part in bioinformatics. There's one example there. Now let's, this problem was just to give you If somebody is interested more to know about this, go to annual reviews of biophysics, and this is a reference, and you'll be able to get a lot of detail of this. So what I'm talking, as I said, is a realistic problem with a realistic tool for mathematics. If you just get to look at it, yes. But this only thing is, I want to highlight here that people from mathematics and statistics should be willing to listen to the people from biology, people from bioinformatics. Then you'll be able to contribute, because you have this theory with you and they have this problem with them, and you have to map it. That's why you have to march out. Either they should come out or you should go out. Both should extend hands and shake hands, and you will be able to take your solution methodology. This is solution methodology, and that's the problem. You'll be able to map it, and that creates genetic therapy, and that helps the world a lot, helps the humanity. So let's look at the next example, financial mathematics. We all know the famous NOVA documentary on the famous NOVA documentary film, which talks about Black-Scholes-Mertens formula. So way back in 1997, this Black-Scholes-Mertens formula, the equations, which is famous as Black-Scholes equation, that was referred to as a holy grail, and it won the Nobel Prize in economics. And what is it? It's a mathematical theory. Again, if you were to look at basically what is coming into that, it's what is basically present there is one could look at from the deterministic sense and also from the stochastic sense. It could be a stochastical differential equation, or it could be a deterministic differential equation. Now we have equations of both the kinds. People have come up with the modeling of this in the form of a differential equation, which is called as a Black-Scholes-Mertens equation, either in the stochastic framework or in the deterministic framework. And they were able to predict what is going to happen to a given set of whatever you're going to invest, what happens to these stocks, so on and so forth, whether the investment is going to lead to the profit or it's going to go down. Should we invest at all or not? That was a question. And people who believed in this theory immediately in 1990s became overnight rich. But the theory did fail. Not that there were some loopholes. It was fine, but not completely fine. Subsequently, people refined it, and now this is very much in the packages. Now, financial mathematics has become very popular. After that, econometrics, financial mathematics became very much popular subsequently. So now that's an example from the. Now let me say, if you want to solve problems from financial mathematics, now what are the tools for mathematics which are used? Of course, modeling. Black-Scholes equation is the modeling. How do you handle a Black-Scholes equation? If you want to handle it's going to be a partial differential equation. It could have a linear or non-linear. There are going to be different versions of Black-Scholes equations. We use numerical methods. We use methods like finite difference method, finite volume method. If you were to just Google it, you'll have lots of books written out using based on finite difference solution methodology for all problems from financial mathematics, or statistical methods for problems in financial mathematics. So we have, if time permits, we will look at some of those methods, at least a couple of methods. I'll give you the glimpses in my course of talk, so that you will also get to see not only the models, but also the way of finding the solutions. Excuse me. Now let's first continue to appreciate the problems that mathematics has brought in from the real life. Next is about the communication networks. So this is, we may think that it is entirely something like a problem of electrical engineers. Mathematics has nothing to do with it. But we'll be pleasantly surprised that mathematicians have a very crucial role to play in these communication networks. So this is a standard example. What you are seeing is the life of MIT professor. In America, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT. Tom Leighton is the professor who is a mathematician. So in the same corridor where Tom Leighton had his office, their web guru who takes care of their network for their department and maybe for the institute is Berners-Lee. Berners-Lee was always having a problem. There was a lot of network traffic, and people were complaining, you are not managing the network of the institute properly. You should do something about it. So Berners-Lee was wondering, how do I handle this problem? Maybe I should. He was not able to come up with a solution because he cannot undo the network several times and redo the networks. It involves a lot of money. So he says that I cannot undo and redo. Who will give the money? I have to now think everything. Who is the person who can think right? Who can abstractify the whole thing? He found he used to go for a cup of coffee with Tom Leighton, and he said that Tom Leighton is a mathematician. He should be able to abstractify. Somehow he suddenly thought, and he challenged Tom Leighton. Tom Leighton says, "Can you solve my network problem? If you are a great mathematician, what is your problem?" He says that I have a network congestion, web congestion. Is there a solution in mathematics? Yes. Tom Leighton started meditating on the problem, and he seemed to have got some intuition into the problem. Naturally, professors, when they want to solve the problem, they have the solution methodologies. They call their best students and pose the problem, give the method of solution, and the students solve it. And Leighton called Levin, who was his best graduate student, and posed this problem as his MS thesis, and said, "You solve this problem in this way using this approach." So he gave the network theory and the graph theory, and this traffic congestion problem was posed, and Tom Leighton with his student Levin solved the problem in a mathematical framework and goes back with a solution and gives a solution to the Berners-Lee, and the Berners-Lee uses that, and it becomes a dynamic routing algorithm. How to handle the web congestion and do the dynamical routing so that the web congestion is taken care. So he comes up with the notion of dynamical routing and uses the complexity theory to establish that it is a polynomial problem, and it is we will be able to handle it. All this is mathematics. This is a mathematics, algorithms, data structures, complexity theory. This is used in this particular graph theory. These are used here to handle this network congestion problem. And the outcome, they solved the problem of MIT, and simultaneously, it also became seed for a $5 billion NASDAQ company. If you were to Google NASDAQ company, it's a very famous network company these days. Not only that, subsequently, so many offshoots. There are so many customers, Adobe, Apple, C-SPAN, CBS, CNN, CNN Interactive, Los Angeles Times, and so on and so forth. A lot of them have become now the clients for this. So what is it? Dynamic routing algorithm, which is an outcome of application of mathematical tools such as graph theory and network congestion, network theory, traffic theory. These were used to handle this problem of network congestion. Outcome was a dynamic routing algorithm, which was able to generate all these things. So there was a problem. The problem was the web congestion, and mathematics helped us handle it. So the tools are basic things that we read. Only thing, you have to be open-minded. You should be able to see, love your subject, shake hands with the people, listen to that, and then you see that you should be able to map it. That's what Tom Leighton did, and Levin implemented as per the Tom Leighton's instructions. And WebGuru Berners-Lee was the one who shook hands over a cup of coffee, and a cup of coffee became a nice approach for solving, and it became a success. Now let's look at another application which we face in real life. Okay, now we have photographs. This is what you are seeing is a photograph of three beautiful young girls here. Unfortunately, it's a very old photograph, and there are some scratches which has formed. So maybe you want to remove these scratches. You don't have another copy of this photograph. You want to remove the scratches, and you want to get back this angelic form of these three beautiful young lads. So we would like to get it back, but how do you do that? You only have a photograph, so or a digital image of this, and a lot of scratches. Now, mathematics enables you to remove the scratches. In fact, we have in IIT Kanpur, we have developed, our team has developed a lot of algorithms and a lot of PDE-based models. I'll show you right away one model. We have developed a lot of new models, which I believe is state of art, and we were able to, we also took this image as a test, and we were also able to remove this and get a new nice thing. So this is called an in-painting problem. What we remove, what is, we look this as something as a in-painted stuff, some scratch. Is there the scratch has been removed using a partial differential equation here, and using a numerical method for solving a partial differential equation is a problem. This problem is to remove this scratch, and you can do this using mathematical model and program it out and give this digital information, use a have a PDE, a method of solution for that, and give this as an input, and you can solve it. You can remove the scratches, and you get a nice, beautiful image, which probably is much more acceptable than this. May not be perfect image, but much more acceptable, much more happier for us to look at than what we had, scratch removing things. So here we have a penguin picture, and then there's a lot of graffiti. Maybe you're taking a photograph, and then when you're taking a photograph, there is a chance for you to add some extra text, and then you added a text here to remember something or to write, appreciate something. Subsequently, you want to remove this, you want to only have these penguins. We do this, yes. This again becomes an image processing problem. So you can remove this using your PDE-based methods, or there are other unconventional methods are also there. There are other approaches, but mathematical approaches are very much helpful in removing this, and they are very powerful like any other method. So you can remove this, and you can get it. And as you see these pictures, these are all very realistic, and they are real world problems. And this is, we have a satellite image. Let's say there are the two, and there is some occlusion which has taken place. Probably we don't want is undesired occlusion. Maybe you're taking an image from the top. There are some occlusions which has taken place, and you would like to remove this occlusion. Can we do this? Yes, mathematical methods and mathematical models and do this de-occlusion business. So this is an example from image processing, and the PD which we have used. This is the kind of the PD we have used, a multimodal image processing model. This is our own model. What is this is called as a well potential function. We defined the well potential function, and we were able to this well potential function based on different intensities which are present in this. We constructed about what you see here. U is an intensity. You have, for example, it's only black and white. So there are two intensities, 0 and 1. If it's going to be a grayscale, the intensities are between 0 and 255, any number. So in the, this is something like a grayscale. So we have different intensities. Those intensities for U takes any value between 0 and 255. And what essentially you see here is something like a, this is, if you were to don't have this, this is essentially a biharmonic equation, right? It's fourth order term which you see here, that's Laplacian of f of u, which is a well potential function. So this is a higher order smoothing, a higher order diffusion, and this is driving home to the intensity. It's called a well potential function. We build this well potential function by looking at the intensities present in this, and we come up with this. U stands for intensities. Therefore, we build a function U depending upon different intensities which are automatically detected. So how many intensities are there? We scan the image and we'll be able to identify different intensities, because what we have is digital information. The digital information is entirely in terms of intensities. Now we can map the whole thing to a partial differential equation. And this is called as a fidelity term, which says that if U naught is your initial image and U is the desired image, so we would do not like to lose the original image. We don't want to lose these three little angels. We would like to retain them. Keeps okay. Now don't deviate the little angels, to keep the information about the angels in the image. That's what is being done. So a PDE is used, and how did we solve? We use a numerical method for solving, because this becomes a nonlinear problem here, because f of u be a nonlinear function. In our case, yes, it is a nonlinear function. So we need to use some numerical tools which we have used in this particular problem. We have used what is known as a pseudo-spectral method, which is essentially based on Fourier basis and also convexity splitting in time. So I will probably not have time to talk about this methodology. I will talk about a couple of methods so that you will get a feel of not only posing problems. Posing problems is interesting. This problem is posed by mathematics. This problem is posed by both engineers and mathematicians. Let me say this problem was first posed not in this framework. They posed it in a very simple framework by engineers, but later on, more realistically, this problem is posed by us, and we did it. Not only pose the problem, also mathematically say that this problem is well defined, which means that the whole problem is the energy of the problem at no time, because it's a time evolving problem, at no time blows up. The energy is always bounded, because initially the problem has got certain initial amount of energy given in the form of initial condition. So this energy cannot blow out, because that's the energy if you give to the system, it has to remain the same as the problem is evolving. That means you give an initial data. The data has got certain amount of values, and this you evaluate the energy based on these values. We give a name as energy, but it is the information measure of the information which is initially given. Finite values are given, therefore there will be finite value for the information measured in the form of energy. So that should not blow up. That should be should be bounded and controlled. That's what is a well-posed problem in a very naive language. So we do prove mathematically that it is a well-posed, and we go on to solve this problem using what is called the convexity splitting pseudo-spectral method. So that's enough. I will give you one of the methodologies subsequently in detail. What I want to drive home here is we have a real-life problem. A real-life problem mathematically you can model, and you can solve based on Fourier spectral analysis, which Fourier basis, etc., is used here. So once again, the tools are from our learnings in the classrooms that we learn can be used to solve this problem. Now let's look at slowly move on to the current crisis that we are facing. So COVID-19. Before that, let's look at how people were using mathematics to solve pandemics and the problems like that. For example, way back, maybe a century back, smallpox was a serious issue. So now how do we say this problem was posed for attacking, for curing or controlling smallpox. So we need to, what those days, more than 100 years back. So this was a serious issue, and people need to, well, once again, thought like what we are thinking now about vaccines and vaccinating, and the questions they faced even then as who to vaccinate. So, what are the risks that have? What are the risks that are involved in vaccination? So there are a lot of questions. Should we go for polyphyletic vaccination, or what kind of quarantine policy should be used? What is the value of early detection? How does it help in planning? What is the value of diagnostic tool? There are a lot of questions which were raised, like what we have facing today in this pandemic. COVID-19, because when we are handling this pandemic COVID-19, we have taken a lot of lessons in handling smallpox, chickenpox, SARS, and so many diseases. There are a lot of lessons we have got. And in fact, whether we have understood or not, a lot of lessons from that have helped in handling COVID-19 that I will show you very soon. How mathematical modeling, how mathematical ways of attacking the solution methodologies, all those things have helped us. I will show you. So in the case of the smallpox problem, they have looked at what is called as SIR model. SIR essentially stands for susceptible, infected, and recovered population. So the population, it is a compartmental model or a cell model. We divide the entire population into a set of people who are susceptible for the disease, and a set of people who are infected by it, and a set of people who are recovered by that. And there is a rate at which susceptible people are getting infected, the rate at which the rate of change of susceptible people, rate of change of infected people, etc., and the rate of change of recovered people. All these things are, these are the beta, gamma, these rates. So the total population is always a whole. That's the one. S plus I plus R, that's the total population. SIR model was a simple differential equation model which was used way back in 1920s by Kermack and McKendrick, model of SIR. And even today, even in the COVID case, people keep talking about it and modifications of this model. One of the recent modifications, 2020 May modification of this model, people thought that the SIR model is not all that relevant for COVID. We will be pleasantly surprised that a French group came up with started with a SIR. They modified the SIR model by saying that these coefficients, beta, gamma, should be dynamic. They were just only made dynamic, and they gave a dynamic expression. They gave beta of T, gamma of T, and gave some constitutive. They gave some closing laws for beta of T and gamma of T, which they were able to predict using machine learning. They were able to come up with some expressions for beta of T and gamma of T, and that becomes again a competitive model. I will show you other competitive models for COVID-19 and the solution methods. So this was what did this model do way back for smallpox? It says that if you use this model, if I have a starting population, susceptible population initially, that's the initial susceptible, initial infected, and initial recovered. So given this data, we have the population, you have three compartments, we put them in the three compartments, we have the data, who are the set of people who are susceptible or infected and recovered. They have proved a theorem which says that for the solution of the SIR model, which is essentially this, SIR model, if the initial people set of people is greater than or equal to gamma by T, then gamma by T is a recovered rate and the infected rate that we have here. I of T increases initially until it reaches its maximum and then decreases to 0. That means infected people will initially increase and gradually they will fall down. What it says is susceptible people are initially, nobody is infected by it, but they are all susceptible. They are slowly susceptible people should gradually fall down. Initially, everybody, and slowly maybe vaccination or quarantine, so many different policies are used. It will gradually fall down in time. So infected, recovered people, initially, there will be no zero recovery. Subsequently, with various precautionary measures and clinical measures that we take, infected people should be, almost everybody who have been infected should be recovered, and the infected people should maybe it will rise and then it should fall down. So then really this makes meaningful. So this theory guarantees yes, such a thing is feasible. So if you take so you can involve some additional policies, etc., in deciding this gamma of T and beta of T, policy driven coefficients, and you will be able to have additional equations which I will show you. You'll be able to make this gives a confidence in making a particular tool, the particular decision to be implemented. These are some of the issues. What kind of quarantine policy will it be helpful? What kind of who to vaccinate? Will it help if I vaccinate this group of youngsters or healthy people or young and old people? Will it help? You want to test it out? You can test it out on this model. Maybe a revised version of this model. It guarantees that you'll be able to get this profiles which says that the solution for this theorem guarantees that this scenario finally is going to be obtained. That means people are going to be recovered, and then the people who are susceptible people will gradually boil down to almost to zero, and the infected will come down. That's a desirable scenario. So that is guaranteed by this theory, and people did see this was effective in the case of smallpox, and so is the case even in the case of other diseases, and that same thing is also happening in the COVID-19. But everything depends upon how correct is this model for a given situation. And for the COVID-19 situation, we will be seeing another model, a set of models to make it more appropriate to the complexities of given situation. Before we go into that, how mathematics helps in solving it? Of course, you can use your analytical methods for solving this set of differential equations. You could use methods like Runge-Kutta method for solving this, or shooting method for using the set of differential equations. You can use shooting method for solving this. We all read the shooting method, Runge-Kutta method in our college days, right? Basic numerical analysis has got. So you can use Runge-Kutta method to solve it. That's a simple mathematical tool for solving this. We have initial data given to us, yes of naught, yes naught, I naught, and R naught, and you will be able to time march using this problem using any of the either shooting method. You could use it as a 2-point boundary value problem, or if it is going to be initial value problem, use something like the RK method. You'll be able to come up with a solution for this. We all know this is a tool for handling a problem. We all read these tools in our regular classrooms. Now let us see what happened to how these models and these tools are helpful. I just said SIR model, and this model is also, this was also implemented with a slight modification. They called it, instead of calling as they susceptible, infected, and recovered, they also used as another compartment called as exposed, SER model, and they used a graph theoretic application for covering the entire African continent for handling. They call it a multi-patch generalization of Neeling and Gillian. This was the multi-patch version of this, where they've used for handling a plague epidemiology way back in 1996 and 1996. They used this, the entire African continent, which was affected by this pneumonic situation. There was a plague which was becoming a lot of havoc in this area. People covered the mathematicians. What they did is they the entire model. Each of these small countries were patched up, and each, what you see is a grid system. This grid system is patching up the entire continent, and in each of these patches they were solving SEIR model. And each of this, because there is a lot of migration of the people, etc., they're all taken care. What happens is going to be migration, the rate at which they migrate, the rate at which each of these of susceptible people, exposed people, infected people, recovery people, they're all different rates. So they have an interaction between the different patches with the different rates, and this problem was solved using parallel computers. Right? There are also not only, so the agents which actually transmit this pneumonic plague was not only there were the agents like fleas, humans, rodents. All these were responsible for as agents for carriers of this plague situation. So interaction between various agents was also studied. It was a very complex problem, and they were able to use parallel computing, and they were able to use graph theory, they were able to use differential equations. All these things put together, they were able to solve this. So I'm very sure that all of you will be able to very easily relate yourself to these differential equations, because this is something which we do it in our BSc. This is something which we do in our engineering, first year, second year, BTech. First year BTech, we solve all these things. We all know this, how to solve these things, and we learn numerical methods right in our BSc or right in our BTech second year. So we learn all these techniques to solve it. We know these things. And additional tools like high performance computing, some additional tools are used, and graph theory is used, and then you put them together, what to learn in the classrooms, you can come up with a solution. Only thing is, we need to collaborate, we need to shake hands, and we need to see map those things, like what Tom Litton has done in his situation on Burnsley posed a problem. Same thing was again looked by the mathematicians here to solve this problem in the African continent. Let's come back to the situation of COVID-19 currently, what is happening, how mathematics is helping in handling COVID-19. Firstly, mathematics has been identified as an important tool for handling these problems. Therefore, the news says this is a Hindustan Times. Out from that, math models may help map COVID-19 trajectory in India. Yes, a lot. If you were to look at all the predictions, etc., one of the very important predictions is coming from the mathematical community. Just to convince you, you can go back to this news item and see. You'll say, yes, this is from a news item. The mathematics can help in tracking the trajectory in India. How do they do this? And there are different news items. This in India. They say internationally, you have the Science Daily, which says that new mathematical model can effectively at the epidemics, and mathematical modeling suggests the containment of COVID-19 is possible. To the healthworld.com, Science Daily, these international news items. So it's a worldwide recognized. So to convince you that it is in fact a tool, let's look what people have done in 2020, how mathematics and mathematical tools have helped in handling COVID-19 situation. Mathematical modeling, the title of this paper, as I have taken it from Communication Nonlinear Science Numerical Simulations, mathematical modeling of spread of coronavirus 2019, taking into account the undetected infections, the use of China. They have used the China data. This is done by a Spanish group. So we will not get into the details. They have used essentially SIR, SCIR model, SCIRD model. They have come up with this. So they develop a mathematical model. They also solve using the Runge-Kutta methods. So they use the Runge-Kutta methods for solving, which we all know. So you know a solution methodology also you know, and you also know the way how to go about modeling. The model looks like this. So just as SIR model had only susceptible, infected, and recovered, in the case of COVID-19, a lot of other complexities are there. Example, there can be susceptible population, exposed population, infected population. Some people who are infected but undetected, recovered but undetected, recovered and detected, hospitalized and recovered, hospitalized and dead. People who are dead, and coalescence period. There's a period over which it is going to manifest. So as that's symptomatic and asymptotic groups, different languages were used, and the controls used is isolate them, quarantine them, trace them, sanitize. These were the controls which were used. All these were taken as variables or parameters in defining a mathematical model like this. This is a modified version for COVID-19 developed by the Spanish group. So these are already given the details of what each of these symbols stand for. Come up with a mathematical model, which again is a set of nonlinear differential equations which are coupled. You can solve them using, again, your RK methods. That's what being done. So we will not get into the details of this model. Yes, what I wanted to highlight here is, yes, we can model, we can solve them together. When they solve the model, there's a cumulative number of the people who are going to be the cases. They were right from the December, the way it realistically reported data, the mathematical model, the way it predicted. This is the comparisons that you have there. So we will once again not get into the details of this. So this is about the number of the affected cases. This is about the deaths. So there is a reasonable match of all these things over different months starting, and then you hear that's some snapshot. So the way they solve this model is again RK methods, Runge-Kutta methods. So I'm not getting into the details of RK method. We all know that you can have a RK2, RK3, RK4, and the class of methods, implicit RK, explicit RK. I guess one of the colleagues will be definitely talking about these methods. I will leave these very, most of you would have, will be definitely, all the students will definitely read, and teachers, some of the teachers will definitely be teaching them. Right? And how do the counterparts of who do not deal with numerical analysis come into the picture? Firstly, if you are a pure mathematician, you have to challenge the people who come up with the method. Is your model correct? I will help you to prove that your model is correct. Then you go into your functional analysis and prove that energy of this system, this model is well-posed model. It's a unique, it has got a unique solution. So why do we need to do this? We cannot solve a wrong model and try to get a solution and try to sell it. The whole thing will be whole theory. The whole thing, prediction is wrong, theory is wrong, everything will go wrong. So mathematicians can play a role in putting this on a neat framework and making corrections if there is something wrong, or putting the limitations. Only under these limitations you will be very sure of your solution. Maybe limitations will come on these coefficients. So a pure mathematician will be able to, a person, a specialist in the theory of differential equations or analysis or function analysis, will be able to come up with this. A modeler will be able to come up with this. A numerical analyst will be able to solve this. A theorist will be able to give a confidence. And that's why there is a group of people here. There is a group of people from computer science, from mathematics, and they also have people from computer. Here we have different groups of people. They have a research center, they have an interdisciplinary center, they have a mathematics people. So many different people are involved in this. right? That's where the collaboration comes back. Not single person is familiar with all the things. For modeling, you need to have an insight. Maybe you need to call a biologist. Then you need to involve him. So to come up with this equation, you need a modeler. So the modeler should understand a biologist, and then one should be able to handle this numerically. So you require a numerical analyst who's familiar with the RK methods and system of nonlinear equation. If they all come together, this problem can be solved in no time. That's what exactly happens in the Western world, and that's what we should try to learn, because we put all of our strengths together. Whether it's a small college or a big college, it's really immaterial. You put all of our expertise together, we will be able to handle it out. That's where we should group together. I would definitely suggest that all the head of the departments, all the heads in the institute should encourage their people to work together. They enjoy the results together, share the merits and share the outcome together. Then then as an institute, you can put up a project and you will be able to get a problem where a lot of expertise is put up in a nice way, monitored by the leaders of the institute. You'll be able to come up with this. This is what has happened. This culture seems to be prevalent in the foreign countries. And this culture is very much with us, but only thing we have to take it out and put it to practicality. That's what I started with, the theory, computation, and application. So we should put hands together and we work. So maybe this course brings in a lot of people who are listening, should definitely give importance to this kind of sharing our expertise in solving a problem. So don't get isolated. Your expertise, whether you are a theoretician, an application person, a computation person, is highly valuable. Nobody is small, nobody is big. We should put our hands together, then we will be able to stand in the forefront in the world. So now let's look at some of the problems, other problems. Mathematical techniques are relevant for bioterrorism. What are the tools used in attacking the bioterrorism? The tools which are used are mathematical epidemiology, ordinary differential equation, dynamical systems, PD, numerical analysis. These are topics. So I teach, and the moment you look at these topics, of course, I teach all these things. We have these subjects in our engineering course. We have these subjects in our mathematics course. Then why do we not really attack the problem? Only thing is, the leader should bring all of them together, and maybe every small institute is no more small. We have the strength because we teach all these things. Only thing, we have to have this perception and orientation, and we solve a problem which will be very useful, and that will be a very nice thing to happen. Now let's get into the world of entertainment and movies. So what you see here, I think many of you would be recognizing this, nothing but the Titanic. So what you are looking at here is a synthetic image of a Titanic. So the Titanic movie, do you think really they took a Titanic ship there and they broke it, and then there was actually in the middle of the sea so much of damage and so much of life loss was there? We all know it's a movie. It really doesn't happen. They use some sets and some animations and things like a mixed match, everything somewhere in the sets and somewhere in the animations. Most of it movie is animated movie. So what is used? Image processing is heavily used. Mathematical modeling is heavily used. This is one of the softwares which is built in. What is sitting inside this? What is sitting inside is geometry, algorithms, PDEs, ODEs, and they're all sitting inside this. When you get this software, it's not just a software. People these days talk, a lot of children, way back 10 years back, Xbox, computer games are very popular. These days we use smartphones, but 10 years back we had Xbox and a lot of computer games. Who were developing all these things? If you were to look little more in detail, a lot of mathematicians were involved, because they can do all these things in a virtual world. So this movie creation, I've given in a sample of image processing. So this is a Titanic movie simulation which was done on this software, and we could create all these animations. So mathematics is already an integral part of various scenarios that we have seen. So it could be, when do we use simulations? Now we are getting into simulations for scientific work or for entertainment. So experiments, for carrying out experiments which are inexpensive, we can just do it. But expensive or very dangerous or impossible or difficult for practical terms, then we move on to the virtual world called simulations. Same thing happens in the artificial effective shots, which are inexpensive. Immediately do it. If it's going to be expensive, then we go into the simulation world. That's what has happened even in the simulation of this. So now let's look at the role of mathematics and numerical methods, etc., that comes in. So modeling and numerical methods one need to also be have an understanding of models if you want to effectively use your numerical methods, because once you understand the physics of the problem and the modeling, you'll be able to use right kind of numerics. You'll be in fact able to tailor your numerics very nicely. That's what I'm going to focus on the next remaining part of my talk. So simulation complements experimentation. So either it's going to be the scientific simulation from chemistry and biology, material modeling, drug design. You need to have an idea of the entire chemical process. You need to be knowledgeable about it. Then you need to know mathematics to translate these things, or you should shake hands with the people who understands. A similar slide I proposed in the beginning. Now we will go a little more into the details of this. Likewise, in global climate ground example, we have this global climate issues very much very much being discussed now. The global warming and then the green gases. These are the things why people talk about smart cities. Mathematics is very much a part of the smart city program. How smart cities can be designed effectively. They do mathematical models, and a lot of projects have been sponsored. You'll be surprised to see once again there are a lot of pure mathematicians, applied mathematicians are working for smart city constructions elsewhere in the world. So only thing we have to explore, and the same thing we can do it. Where the smart cities program is one of the agendas of our government too. So we can participate being mathematicians. We can shake hands with our engineers. So the same thing happens in the radiation transport, which is very dangerous to do practically. So we can do in the simulation world, and likewise in ICF modeling, like we have your combustion fuels, and all. In this case, mathematical modeling is used. We will see some snapshots a little more in detail now. Now let's look at the world of aerodynamics. So we would like to come up with airflow models. Which has got optimal in some sense. What is for simply, we would let's in a very naive language, we would like to have a plane to have very good thrust force. So it should go forward, very nice lift force, and a very small drag force, and there should not be any stresses acting on the body, so that the plane is stable and there are no disturbances, is able to withstand the disturbances with the least discomfort, and safety levels are very high. How will you be? You have to come up with a aerodynamically in a nice shape which is acceptable. How do you actually come up with such shapes? You cannot really take the plane into the sky and keep doing it. Of course, people say, okay, we have wind tunnels where people can carry out experiments. Yes, wind tunnel is an approach experimentally to do that. That's also a very costly process. So there are wind tunnels in our country. In fact, IIT Kanpur has one of the national wind tunnel facilities where a lot of these kind of testings are done. But you can do using mathematical models and virtually on the computers. This is a snapshot which talks about how the flow is taking place across this across the section of the wing of the airplane. So that's the velocity field which is taking place, and what you see here, magnitudes of the velocities, and what you see here is the stresses, where there are the pressures and the stresses which are created. So now we will be able to come up with an optimal shape so that these are as minimal as possible. This I've already talked about, bioinformatics problem. So now we can also control forest fires using mathematical models. For example, simply use an elliptical equations and simulate them. You will be able to give the initial covering envelope of the forest fire. You just give the initial envelope, and let's say this envelope, and let's say how this fire is going to spread. You'll be able to do through the simulation, and you'll be able to see how fast it is going. So it is evolving a curving space with a particular speed, and depending upon some speed of winds and disturbances which are in the neighborhood. That's what essentially that's happening. What you're seeing here is a elliptic evolution that is taking place in that time. So which again is modeled by a simple PDE. You have a starting input as the initial curve, and then the forest fires you'll be able to trace, and you'll be able to alert the people, and you'll be able to know how fast I should evacuate, and who should be the first people to be evacuated. These kind of decisions mathematics can help in making. So now let's look at the world of simulations a little more in detail. What is the numerical simulations? A lot of the course is essentially focused on learning the ways of simulating. That's what a lot of the numerical methods for solving engineering problems, that's essentially the thing that the course is focused on. So what is essentially the numerical simulation? Carry out a numerical simulation, firstly, you need to have a mathematical model. Mathematical modeling and simulations, can it be of any use? Is it important? What is the connection of that with the computer science? So what are its future challenges? Let's address these questions. So mathematical models are used for getting the data. We can using models we can come up with idealized process and phenomena. It means abstractifying, capturing the whole thing in an abstract fashion, but which has got a lot of reality built into that. Control contributions from the environment. So explore when the experiments are difficult or impossible to do. So we use models in this context and explore and this exploration should be cost efficient and explore without potential safety issues. So how does the modeling and simulation go on? You have a model and an experiment, and we have a new thing which came up is computers. Okay, so now the simulation, earlier we had model and simulation, now sorry, model and experiment. Now we have model can be interfaced with the simulation instead of directly going to the experiment. So modern development uh, of models for physical phenomena has got three way. Of course, now fourth one has come as a data these days. So model, experiment, simulation, and data is the fourth branch which has come up. So we could also include the data here. More data science has come up there. So what is simulation? Simulation essentially denotes the process of exploring mathematical models of phenomena and process by means of computer, right? So ingredients for this simulation, so you need to understand the phenomena or a process which you want to or which you want to get a solution. It could be natural, it could be man-made, it could be virtual. So you need to have insight into this technical insight. When you say what's the physics behind it, what's the chemistry, what's the biology, and what is the economics. So this will give you the insight and complete understanding of the happening. Example, there is a whirlwind or there is a cyclone, there is going to be a heavy rainfall. You need to understand, or there is going to be a plague situation, or there's going to be a pandemic. You need to understand all these things. So then once you understand this, you translate your understanding into a mathematical model in terms of differential equations, for instance, or it could be also empirical formulas. For instance, right now I'm talking about differential equations, not necessarily a mathematical model, need not be always differential equations. It could be a graph theoretical model. It could be it could also be the system simulation model where we have different systems and interaction is taking place. Or it could be a bioinformatics model. It could be anything. So or it could be a statistical model. It could be anything. For instance, it's PDEs, because I will be showing you some PDEs and method of solutions. So if it's going to be a PDEs, often it turns out that you cannot solve these PDEs by the methods that we learn. So what we need to do, we will go let me at least get an approximate solution. If you cannot get a highly acceptable and coveted closed form solution, I go for a numerical solution which has got some approximations, but then if it gives me a clue into what is happening, that's good enough. So I get the numerical methods. Once I have the numerical methods, I need to now solve them on a computer. I need to write into the software and implement at the computer the results and interpret it out. That's what essentially a simulation is all about. So now let's look at the simulation pipeline. I have a process. So this process need to be understood. Once I understand the process, I translate into a mathematical model. Once I have a mathematical model, I develop my algorithms and numerical schemes and go on to the computations. Once I have the computation, then I go on to the visualization of my results. Then I see if these predictions are fine or not, and then you control it. Once you get learned lessons from it, you go back to your process and see how you can modify or control your process. This pipeline goes on. Right? You can refine if your results are not acceptable, you go there, refine your mathematical model or refine your computer way of finding the solution. So if you were to look at this, if you say that I only want to look at numerical methods for solving, you don't want to know this, don't want to know this, you don't want to know this. So you are highly localized, there is a problem. Definitely being highly localized, you will not be completely successful all the time. You may get success, but not all the times. So you need to know the global scenario that numerical methods for solving is only one segment of the entire cycle. There are other cycles. So I need to understand all these parts. I need not be an expert here. I need not be an expert here. I may be an expert only in this, not even in this. But I should know how to get feedback from all these things and how to give the feedback to these things and how to learn from them, improve my techniques. So so I brought in this simulation pipeline. So though this entire workshop is focused only on this, if you are going to be blind about these things, it is really not good. Shake hands with everybody. You be an expert. You should be open to all this. Shake hands. Then you will become very strong. Whatever you convey, you will be very robust in your conviction, and you'll be able to contribute exactly to this process, which is what This is what has brought this given life, and you want to solve this. If you solve something which is not relevant here, no use. So you need to understand that. Therefore, so this pipeline one need to understand, but you can be an expert only here. Somebody is an expert here, somebody is an expert here, you shake hands. So that's where I said integration is very important, and you be in your world but integrate with others, at least in solving some global problems. Now let's look at, so it is widely used, this kind of simulation and visualization is used widely in number of the fields. Now let's look at some of the problems and how we are going to solve mathematical models and how numerical methods for solving that. Let's get into the details. So we have already looked at the simulation is important in the exploration ranging from DNA to investigation of blood circulation, inner organs like heart, brain, and drugs. Now let's look at heart. Okay. Now I've told you about symmetric waves and the chaos which is taking place. So what you have here is I'm going to talk in detail about this particular thing. So what millions of people suffer from atherosclerosis, which is leading to fatty blockages of arteries gradually obstruct blood flow and ultimately cause the heart to stop beating. And this remains one of the leading causes of heart attacks around the world. So what you are seeing here is a bypass which is being done, a bypass surgery when the doctors want to do. So not everybody, we would always choose an expert hospital with good experts where doctors have a high success rate in doing the bypass surgeries, though this has become highly successful surgery these days. Still we have our choices for picking up the doctor, choices for where we should get admitted and things like that. So that's because the bypass itself, bypass surgery is it's not a simple surgery. You need to be very careful about it. So we will get into the details of this bypass surgery, how mathematics and numerical methods are going to help in virtually doing lots of bypass surgeries. A doctor can, a new surgeon can learn it on a computer and then go to the patient and do in a clinical situation. He can actually do the surgery after a lot of practices on computer, because it will avoid practicing on patients is out of question. Nobody will accept it, right? So you can practice virtually and discuss your learning with experts who are available for very limited time for you. So you discuss your expertise, learnings from this, and then you go into the surgical world. Maybe expert will help you once. Subsequently, this will be very helpful. So virtual surgical world, mathematics is an integral part. I'll show you more details about it very soon. So here, what you are seeing here is cardiac arrhythmia. What you are seeing is a heartbeat takes place, expands and contracts. The expansion and contraction, if it doesn't happen in a rhythmic way, then it will lead to what is known as there can be chaotic way, somewhere where it is supposed to expand, it will not expand, it will remain in a contraction state, or whole thing remain collapsed for longer time, there is no pumping of the blood, then that will lead to cardiac arrhythmia. That's the spiral waves. There is, or some portion of the heart is erratically getting expanded and contracted. So that's called as chaotic waves or the spiral waves. So can such waves be present? Can I track those waves? Now I want to trigger this portion of the heart which is performing erratically. I want to put a pacemaker and make it function normally. Can I do that? Mathematics gives a way out. Of course, finally, doctors will have to accept it. There is a way out. You can model the entire electrical pulse propagation on the heart using mathematical models, and we'll be able to come up with models which will help in understanding the spiral wave generation. And if you put a pacemakers, what happens with these spiral waves? We can simulate on a computer, and you can do surgical implantation of all these pacemakers. That's another where mathematicians and the engineers and doctors work together. So now what you are seeing here is a snapshot of this cardiac electric activity, but I think I will not get into the details. For the want of time, I will only say that for solving this cardiac electric activity, ODs and PDs are used, and there are a lot of numerical methods. We have also contributed a lot to this. I think I will. So what we do is we take the entire heart here, and we cannot solve the problem heart as such. We have to digitize the heart. So these are the representation of the heart, which is called as a mesh generation. We try to find the solution at all these points, which seem to be the vertices of these tetrahedrons. We try to represent the heart in the form of this mesh or a grid, and your PD and ODE is represented at all these grid points. So when you represent it, it becomes algebraic equations. So the PDE using a finite element method or a finite difference method or finite volume method, it reduces a set of algebraic equations and we solve them. Now let me uh, give you the details how mathematics completely helps in bypass surgery, virtual surgery is how you can do on computer. Let me give you some models. Let me give you a solution methodology. At least one problem in detail we will try to look at. So now this is a case of uh, coronary artery which is slowly getting blocked. There's an occlusion which is taking place, and doctor wants to do a bypass. So when the road is blocked, I take a bypass road. The artery is blocked, put a bypass and let the blood flow in that. Now that's a bypass surgery which is regularly, routinely done. Now, know that not all bypasses are successful. Some patients come back in a short span. Some people bypass surgeries last for several years without any problem. For some people, after some years, again there is occlusion taking place in this. Various questions: is this material biocompatible? Is the suturing done at the right angle? The distance between the block and the where this bypass is done is the right distance, because it is going to alter the blood flow dynamics. So I need to study this dynamics a priori. How can I do this? So on a patient, we cannot do it. We can do virtually in the mathematical world. So how do you do this? Firstly, mathematically model this problem. So if you mathematically model the problem, you have a set of equations. It's a simple version to what is known as the Navier-Stokes equation, continuity equation, momentum conservation equations. Some of you may immediately recognize it. It's a very simple model here, which I have shown. Just to give you a snapshot, yes, mathematically you can model in terms of the velocities of the blood flow, the pressure inside the blood and the artery, the pressure of the inside the blood flow. Then we have to complete it, close it with what is the flow initial velocities. Whether one can use if you are studying it, because we have a pulsatile flow. So we can academically, if you are studying, you can use a pulsatile condition as an oscillatory flow in this fashion. And you can have some boundary conditions. These are all to close the problem, whatever you have here. You need to describe how the flow is entering here, how the flow is taking place here, and how it is coming out. So that's the initial, how initially the flow is. So you have the equation which governs the flow in terms of momentum conservation and mass conservation, which is essentially the Newton's laws. And what we have here is a boundary condition, initial conditions to complete the problem, right? So I will not get into the details because already I'm coming close to my time limit. So if somebody is not interested in this boundary condition, because this is a simple academic boundary condition, I am no more interested in it, because for the patient, this is not exactly the oscillatory flow is not the situation. So you go to the patient, take his data from ECG, exactly the way when it is peaking, when it is falling down, the systole and the diastole. You can take the information of the flow rate from his for a particular patient and give that as an input here. So instead of this boundary condition, now you can take information and give as an input here for solving this equation. So that becomes a physiological data. So you can take the data in terms of the point you have, you can feed the data in terms of the points, or you can have a fit for this, take a curve and replace this curve by this fit that you have developed. And you'll be able to have a realistic data, patient-specific input data you'll be able to generate. Now, what are the challenges for the mathematicians from analysis side? Mathematicians from analysis side, if you're having all these things, is this a right model? Is this a well-posed model? So what analysis people can do, they use the functional analytic tools. These are also important tools. So you take the whole problem into the framework of your mathematical spaces here. There's a mathematical spaces where we are going to search for the solution. So these are the velocity space. Velocity space should be such that velocity itself, this space means velocity is bounded. The L2 since the integral of modulus of V square is bounded. And also the derivative of V, modulus of the square of the derivative of the V are also bounded. Because in this problem, why these spaces proposed? In this, I have a function and I have a derivative of the function, derivative of the pressure. All these terms should be bounded in the realistic sense. So what should be my solution space? Functional analysts will say that your solution space should be that space where these things are well defined. Function and its derivatives are well defined in this space. The pressure space, function is well defined. That means in the L2 norm or L2 in the L2 sense, the function is bounded. So that is, if you have some boundary conditions, no slip boundary conditions, these are respected. So function, if you are able to say, I have a no slip, and the functional analyst will say, this is what is your space like. Now, what is the kind of the problem? This is a good problem. How will a pure mathematician will say? For the want of time, I will straight away go to the final result. The final result says that I have, for a given system, that's the important result. This is the next result. So energy inequality of the Navier-Stokes equation, which proves that The energy of the system, what you see is the velocities of the system, derivatives of the velocities of the system. This is always bounded by the given energy. That's the initial velocities which we prescribe within the physiological profile which I have shown you. So this should be bounded for all time to come. So that's the energy estimate, and this result, this should be the solution for your given problem. The solution which is coming from the Navier-Stokes equation should respect this energy bound. If you are able to, under the given conditions, if you give all your equations, and if we can prove this for you, then you are sure that my model is fine. It's going to be well posed, and it is that's a Hadamard condition which says that my conditions, my problem is well posed. Now I can take this model and solve it. Now, how do I solve this problem? The numerics come into the picture there, because as you look at this, problem is no more a trivial problem. This problem cannot be solved by regular methods. If you want to do analytical methods, yes, there are analytical methods, but you have to use a lot of approximations. So for a realistic problem like a blood flow, if you were to solving on a patient, those approximations may be dangerous. So maybe in idealistic situations are very desirable, but you need to go solve the terms in its entirety for getting the solution correctly or closely to the realistic situation. So we go for the numerical methods. So I will talk about one numerical method, which is the finite volume method. What we do here is the given equations, what I have shown you, Navier-Stokes equations, we cast it in the form of integral equations. So what exactly happens, these are the volume equations, we cast it in this form. The Navier-Stokes equations are now put in a vectorial integrals over the volume, where the volume could be the heart, in our case, it is a heart problem, or a blood vessel, or a bifurcation, whatever you're taking, it could be that geometry. I could have, and these are my velocities, these are the variables. It's a vector problem, these are my variables, velocities and pressure. So I first cast this problem, use my Gauss divergence theorem and write it out in terms of fluxes. And then give the numerical evaluation of the fluxes and write the problem in an algebraic form. What we do is, I do the numerical evaluation, first represent this in terms of the fluxes by using Gauss divergence theorem. Volume integrals are written out in the fluxes, and give the numerical approximations of, for these quadrature formulas that you get. They become the numerical estimation of the fluxes. And for the time you use something like a Euler, backward Euler, or Crank-Nicolson, then you will end up with an algebraic problem of this kind. So now this is a discrete problem, this is a continuous problem. Now this becomes a problem which you are going to represent in terms of those grid points which I have shown you before. Now this will be actually, you are looking this as a PD, it is no more a PD, it is a simply an algebraic equation which is time dependent. If you also use a time discretization, you will end up with a problem of this kind. So that's an algebraic equation. It's Ax equal to B being written out in a slightly different form. Essentially, it's an algebraic problem. So one could use, people are familiar with the alternate direction implicit method. So this, you could factorize this, write this in terms of the xi direction, eta direction, and the zeta direction. Instead of x, y, z, we are using xi, eta, and zeta. So I have the problem now. Beeman-Warming is a factorization method, generalization of alternate implicit direction method. So we solve the problem in the xi direction first, and eta direction and zeta direction, and we will be able to invert and get the solution for this algebraic equation, which essentially is going to solve your problem. Now, I've given you a glimpse of a numerical method. Let me again go through this glimpse. I have a PDE. I've given you the model, and I use something called the finite volume. What we do is, the given strong form of the equations which I have shown here, strong form of the problem is the differential equations, the initial conditions that we use here, that all these things are converted into this integral form, written over discrete elements. So that's the control volumes that you are using there. And we convert this into algebraic equations by using Gauss divergence and write out the fluxes and the numerical approximation for the fluxes, and do the time discretization. You end up with your algebraic equation of this form. Now you use factorization of this matrix, which is known as a Beeman-Warming factorization. So split the matrix in the x, y, z directions, write this as a product of three directional, and you'll be able to handle this. It's something like you all are familiar with LU decomposition method. So just to give you a feel, there's a more generalized decomposition, which is a Beeman-Warming factorization. In this case, we do this, and we can factorize it and then solve it. These are the methods. LU is something, LU factorization, we learn it in this college, numerical analysis, and Beeman-Warming is an advanced brother, is a senior brother of the same family. So we use that brother from that family, and then we handle it out. Now here is the bypass surgery solution, right? In a bypass surgery, the blood here, what you are seeing is a block. Is a block. There is, therefore you see everything blue. There is no blood flow here. So velocity, there is no flow of velocity. When it's zero, blue is zero. That means there's no flow of velocity. Is completely blocked. So put a bypass here and let the flow take place here. Now, when you are using this bypass surgery, what happens when you do the bypass surgery? Natural blood flow is now bypassing the natural route and is bypassing this route and is going in that route. When you do this, the flow dynamics is changed because the path is changed, the dynamics is going to change. When you change this, what happens is the undesirable localized recirculation is taking place in the blood here. This is not desirable because such a thing can lead to the rupture of the blood vessels and it can lead to so many other complexities. This is not desirable. It can lead to another blockage here. Now I want to avoid this recirculation, which is not desirable. So these are situations. These are the velocity controls, and correspondingly what you are saying, magnitudes of the velocities. Here you see the flow pattern in terms of the streamlines. Now I want to do this. So one thing is what you see here is the distance between the blockage and this bypass is different from what you have here. Right? Distance, which by changing the distance and changing the angle of the bypass, you are able to get rid of this recirculation. So this you cannot do it on a patient. Virtually, you can take the patient geometry and put it on the computer. For his geometry, you simulate all these things. And you know how I've already shown how mathematics plays role or image processing plays role. And you'll be able to come up with this kind of solution that you know what should be the distance at which this bypass should be done. What should be the angle at which this crack should be moving along. And these things you can decide a priori using mathematics and mathematical tools like finite element method, partial differential equations, finite volume method, and you get a solution out there. So I have given you the glimpse. Now I think I have several interesting examples to show you, but looking at the time, so this seemed to be a place where I can pause and stay for your feedback and see if I should proceed further or stop it. So before I stop it, I say that we have looked at the world of mathematics, how important it is in modeling, and we also looked at the world of simulations and a couple of numerical methods, at least the finite volume and finite difference we talked, and we have seen how we can translate the partial differential equations into algebraic equations and solve them using this. We got a glimpses of it, not that we got into the details, we got a glimpses of it. So, and we also seen the visualization and in handling some of the real life problems. So I pause here and revert back to the organizers to take their consent if I should proceed or should I stop. So it's up to the organizers. So Dr. Mahesh and Dr. Anurag can direct me if I should stop or can I proceed?
Sir, Anurag, sir, please.
Yes, sir. If you want to proceed, yeah, 5 to 10 minutes, you can do that.
No, I think this is one place where I can stop, where I think I did give the glimpses of everything. Yeah, so now it depends on, because you may do today's a festival day. That's what I thought. So I thought I should be practical also. I should not be impractical. So I stopped it. I think my stipulated time is exactly 12:30. It's now 12:30. So so I think it's fine. I think I can stop here because this completes a topic. I've given you a feel of everything. That's one way I think we could stop here.